Welcome to another episode of Untold Legends, where we explore the tales and stories found within the worlds of video games, movies, comic books, and anything in between. Castlevania is a series that's known to have a million sequels, including a couple of side games that are not well known, like the mobile exclusive Order of Shadows, starring a rejected Dragon Ball Z character, and the Castlevania arcade game that never made it to the United States, which I want to play badly. Konami, if you're listening, please release it on the PlayStation Store with VR and Move support. Thank you. But today, we're going to explore the tale of a game that's almost been lost to time. The lost Castlevania game, Castlevania Resurrection. You've never heard of this one, you say? That might be because it never saw a release. Resurrection was set to be a Sega Dreamcast exclusive and a launch title for the console on September 9th, 1999. But during development, constant delays forced the release date to move further and further into the year 2000 until the project died. But what caused its cancellation? What was it about? And who were the characters in this adventure? Resurrection would have starred the main character of Castlevania Legends. This game introduced gamers to the first playable female Belmont, Sonia, on her quest to slay Dracula. Sonia was the original Belmont. She was the source of the Belmont clan's establishment as a force to be reckoned with. Now keep in mind, this is 5 years before PS2's Lament of Innocence was released, which rewrote the origin of the Belmont clan. And I like to call Sonia one of the lost Belmonts, since her character was eventually written completely out of Castlevania's continuity. As far as Konami is concerned now, she never existed. Many reasons have been put forward explaining why. It's been said that Japanese developers may have not wanted a female being the origin point of the clan. Konami had a different development team working on Legends, and the original team wanted nothing to do with their project. And Legends heavily implies that Sonia and Alucard had some sort of romantic relationship or really close friendship, depending on how you read their dialogue with each other. At the end of the game, Sonia is shown holding a baby Trevor Belmont. And although the game never specifically states it, many gamers have come to the conclusion that the baby must have been Alucard's, which would have made Alucard the father of Trevor Belmont, and it would have linked the Belmont clan to Dracula by blood, an idea that Konami didn't like at the time. Konami's solution? Erase the game entirely. Interestingly enough, the Lords of Shadow universe revived this very same idea, linking the Belmont bloodline directly to Dracula. I think more importantly though, the story in Legends does clash with the now established history involving Dracula's war on humanity and when it started. I think overall that was a better reason for removing Sonia. Regardless, I always thought she was an awesome character, and it really is a shame that she never got the time to shine in a full console Castlevania experience. Resurrection would have solidified her as part of the series, where she would have joined another lost Belmont, a man named Victor Belmont. Victor never appeared in any other classic Castlevania title. He was an original creation for Resurrection that actually had an interesting backstory, very different from the other Belmonts that came before him. Whereas previous Belmonts were usually heroic legends ready to take up the vampire killer and destroy their arch-nemesis Dracula, Victor was quite the opposite. He was a wandering gambler and a mercenary, living in 19th century England. He knew the role he was supposed to play as a Belmont and wielder of the vampire killer, but refused to accept his destiny. He wanted nothing to do with it. He pushed it aside and he ran away from home at an early age, becoming a rebel and outcast. But one night, fate would remind him of his inescapable destiny. While gambling, he was involved in a fight with another man, and just as he pulled out a knife, he was mysteriously transported to another time by an unknown force. And this is how the story of Castlevania Resurrection begins. It was essentially a time travel story. Sonia and her descendant Victor are both pulled out of their times and sent to the year 1666. That's an oddly specific year, so it was likely to tie the game's events to the events of the Great Fire of London that historically did happen in the same year. Apparently, Dracula met a new woman at some point, and this new countess created a portal that allowed Dracula to re-enter the mortal realm, and all his monsters began ravaging the land with his new lover at his side. And by opening the portal, the Countess also created a dimensional rift that would eventually plunge all of reality into chaos. So the forces of light in the universe plucked two Belmont heroes into this time period to stop her. The last 3D Castlevania game before Resurrection was Castlevania 64, which was more exploration-based. Resurrection was intended to be 3D, but at the same time it was very linear and action-packed, but with updated graphics, and it would have had 5 to 6 fairly long stages that had you playing as both Sonia and Victor, as Sonia taught Victor how to accept his destiny as a Belmont. And why was Resurrection cancelled? One reason: the PlayStation 2. The Dreamcast was one of my favorite consoles of all time, but Sega had been struggling for a while, and interest in the as of yet unreleased PS2 was exploding, and Konami was watching. Near the end of its life, Resurrection was almost done. They just needed to do some final tweaking and some balancing, and it would have been ready for release. At the time, Sony hadn't given a firm announcement of the PS2 yet. Konami already had such little faith in the Dreamcast, and dwindling sales were making it clear that the beloved console was on its way out. And then the day came when Sony officially announced the PlayStation 2 and its release date. The same day it was announced, Konami canned Castlevania Resurrection completely, not willing to take a chance on the Dreamcast. And during development, they never planned to have a possible PlayStation 2 port, so the framework for porting it over to other consoles was just never put in place. To move the game over to the PS2 would have required them to recreate the entire game code and start development from scratch. Instead, they gutted the unfinished game and took ideas from it and implemented them in later 3D Castlevania titles. But Resurrection did leave some sort of legacy, and proof of its one-time existence behind. There was the trailer presented in this video, and you can even find much of the game's soundtrack online. But the biggest remnant of Resurrection left behind is Victor Belmont himself. When the Lords of Shadow saga set out to essentially reboot the series, Lords of Shadow 2 implemented the lost character of Victor Belmont. This version of the character, living in the year 2057, was the leader of the Brotherhood of Light, fighting against the forces of Satan during the end times, and eventually encounters Dracula, fighting him, and then teaming up with him to stop the end of the world.
I'm Victor. Victor Belmont. Commander of the Brotherhood of Light. Protector of humanity. And the last of my illustrious bloodline.
While in my opinion the character didn't get the ending he deserved, it was really cool seeing a Belmont from a cancelled game finally make an official appearance in some form. The chances of seeing Resurrection make a comeback in the future is next to nothing at this point, but since we did have Victor revive from the ashes of cancellation, perhaps there is a chance that young Sonia Belmont will one day make a return to classic Castlevania and have the opportunity to shine that she so deserves. And that is the story of how the lost Castlevania game quietly died. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button with all of your strength. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss any new content. You can follow me on social media or go into my community tab for updates. And for as little as $1 a month, you can support the channel directly on Patreon. This is Fabian, I love you guys, and I'll see you next time.